Hey people, do you want to get your music into Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Tidal, and all the rest of the streaming services? Check out DistroKid. It's affordable and super easy to use. I've used it to distribute my music and I really dig it. Our listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/talkguitars. That's 30% off for our listeners at distrokid.com/talkguitars. Go get it. Hey everybody, it's Chris and Rick Talk Guitars, and today we are going to do listener mail, which we don't have a thing for listener mail, but we get emails occasionally, and some of them are suggestions, which we totally appreciate, and I just want to take time to say, please email us. Please message us however you can, because we love to hear from you guys, and we love to hear your suggestions. This one came from Amal Amrit. I hope I'm not pronouncing that right. Amal, if not, please let me know. But anyway, he sent us a really cool suggestion, and I'm going to read it to you verbatim. So it says, hey, what about some episodes on lead guitar playing for beginners? I still am not able to make some improvement in my game. So Chris and I thought it would be great to talk about, because I think we talked about soloing before a little bit, but it is a topic that's talked a lot about in the guitar forums, in the guitar world. And for beginners especially, it can be daunting because, you know, what do? I've got this chord progression. I'm fairly new to guitar. How do I navigate this? So, Chris, I want to ask you to start us off and say, hey, you know, what would be your advice to Emil as a beginning guitar player wanting to kind of get his lead game going a little bit?
Okay, this is interesting because it's something that's relevant to me because I've been doing this later. You know, not a beginner, but I just want to say, even from a beginner perspective, this is a lifetime journey where you run into this. Point. You'll run into this thing every single time, and pretty soon you'll be a more advanced guitar player, and you're like, my lead sucks. What can I do? That's one of the great things about guitar is you could live to be 200 years old, and you're still growing, and you still have to learn stuff. So don't be discouraged because it's just something that happens all the time to everybody. Like I said, I've been playing for a million years, and I'm just going through that very same thing. So it'll be good for me to try to think back from like a beginner level too, because it's been so many years, and maybe I can come up with things that, those kind of things like I wish I would have known that then, kind of things, instead of spewing bullshit or, too much technical jargon. But I can try. But first of all, I'm gonna have to ask you, what was the question?
Basically, as a beginning guitar player, how do I get my lead game going? Playing lead guitar,
That's right. That's what it was. Even different goals and different levels that people are at. So I'm just going to speak very basically and kind of assume that there's some things in place. Like if you even have a lead game to start, it probably means that maybe the pentatonic scale. And if you start there, that's great. I mean, learn that and get comfortable with that scale. All around the neck, find the notes. Basically, the guitar journey is about learning the fretboard. Just knowing the fretboard, know where things are, know how things sound. So, you're starting out with the pentatonic scale, and you're going to run into people they'll say stupid shit like, I bet you only play the pentatonic scale. It's fucking notes. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to use those notes because I'm a guitar player and that's what it's about. So, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use other things too. But the thing with scales in general, and it doesn't matter if it's the pentatonic, the major, the minor, any of the modes or whatever, is the way that you learn it is you're going, you're playing like usually start out in that little box where you're going from the low to the high or from the high to the low back, and breaking out of that and making it sound more musical is kind of the problem. And you'll find people that know every single mode and they play and switch them out all the time who sound like they're practicing because that's the nature of learning, from a scale-based thing. So things you can do is don't lose sight of the fact that the scale is very important. That's the roadmap to the neck. It's all up and down the neck. Those notes follow these patterns. There's some things you can do to kind of break out of that. Maybe don't start on the low and go to the high, or maybe get used to running both ways back from the middle to the end, back, etc. Just like kind of switch up, skipping strings, starting in different places. Things like that will help. And let me see some other shit that would have helped me. The other thing too is after you're comfortable with, let's say you are using the minor and major pentatonic scales,
Hmm.
pull in the other, there's only two other notes that, that's different from, the major and the minor scale. Look at those notes and see how, if you can work those in somewhere, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yep.
because that can change it up. Suddenly you'll have access to like a different phrase, different phrases and things will come up. And that was really helpful for me when I started doing that. I never play, like, I don't think I ever play, not consciously, but I'm never using the strict pentatonic scale, I don't think, because there's so many,
Yeah.
there's these notes that are in the other two notes that are really do great things that I just got used to playing all the time. But I don't think, I don't think
Yeah.
that I'm playing in this scale or that scale right now. What else was there that was something that I wish I would have known? Oh, this is a huge one, and this will go on for the rest of your life. If you
Hmm.
get really frustrated with your playing, one of the best things you can do is stop playing and listen to music. Go listen to
Yeah.
music. Listen to
Yeah.
guitar players.
Yeah.
Find guitar players that you like and ask yourself, why do I like that? What about this guitar solo do I like? What is it? Find out, what he's bringing to the song and what is it? Is it bright sounding? Is he starting in the middle of the neck? Is it, what is his tone like? What is its attack like? All this other stuff. And I do that all the time. Sometimes I'll feel really like I'm just like I hit a wall. I hate my playing. I'm so sick of it. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to play, and I'll just listen to music for
Yep.
a week and stuff, and maybe not really touch the guitar. But again, be really open to while listening to music. You hear something, you're like, I got to know what that is. You know what I
Yep.
mean? I got to, and
Yep.
figure it out. And always look to whether you're doing a tutorial or you're trying to learn from a record or from a YouTube video. Always be aware of something that kind of sparks something in you, like in that you that goes with something that you already know, that just kind of makes a little light go on and go, oh, that makes this other thing make sense and that makes sense, and grab that. I mean, this happens to me all the time. I'll say, I want to learn, I'll hear a solo or something will come to mind. I'm like, I want to learn that solo, or I want even like chords from a song. I want to learn that. And I'll start learning it either from, memory or from like, I'll find a record online or from my record collection or something, or I'll watch a YouTube video and I'll start learning this and I'm going along and all of a sudden I'll hit something that I hadn't run into before. And it kind of makes sense in the context of something I already know. And I'll grab that and stop and I'm done with the video. I mean, I go take that and I put that into, and then I'm
That's
practicing
cool.
playing my shit, but I'm adding that to it. And then I've just
Yeah.
gained something. So never feel bad about not getting all the way through a video or, learning something. If you find something worthwhile, feel free to bail and, kind of use it. Because that's kind of the whole goal is to like collect things that make sense and you're in the context of what you play and, and just building up like a library, a musical library from all these things. And yeah, I'm going to stop there and let Rick take it for a while. But that's like the first coffee rant of my input. So why don't you go while I take a break?
That's awesome. And that's all of that is what I would have said too. And Chris and I are the same age, so we listen to records and tapes, but mostly records. And it was invaluable to me because I could put a record on, and if I wanted to learn something, whether it was a song or a solo, I could put that record on and I could slow it down, or I could just listen to it and move that needle in that little section over and over and over again. And what I'm getting at is ear learning. And like Chris said, listening to music is such an invaluable way to ingest all of that stuff. And whether it's guitar playing or horn playing or vocals, whatever it is, like a lot of great players will say that. They'll go, I listen to horn players because I love the way they play melody and I love the way they counterpoint, whatever it is. And so guitar players will try to cop horn passages and transpose that to the guitar. And that's a really fun exercise. But back to like records, like, nowadays too, you've got a plethora of stuff online. You can look at videos, there are video lessons you can buy and get. You can get free stuff on YouTube. So I would really recommend too going out in YouTube and finding maybe there's songs you want to learn and somebody will show you how to play them. And then you can take that and, like Chris said, try to incorporate that into your own playing and your own style and practice that. The web has a ton of options for you as a beginner. You could start, like there's the Cage system, which I guess is popular right now. And I see people pushing that. I'm kind of curious about it because I'm an experienced guitar player. Chris is saying thumbs down.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but that was something that I was going to say too, that we ran that's a perfect place to put this. There are so many, it's really frustrating trying to learn stuff as a guitar player because there's so many tools out there that make shit more confusing. There's like these little cheats that, kind of obscure actual useful theory from
Yeah.
you because it's just like this shortcut or this cheat. And
Yeah.
it's really hard to navigate that. An example is right now I'm trying to get my leads a little bit, get a little bit more vocabulary. So I've been kind of looking into modes, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
And that's like the same thing where there's all these little tricks to kind of help you, and they're so fucking they make it so hard to understand. And
Yeah.
every one of them is a video. Finally, modes explained in an easy way to understand. And you look at it and it's the same thing. It's just super, super confusing.
Yep.
And so I found a way that works for me to get it. And suddenly it made sense. And then when I look at the way they were showing, I'm like, that was a really weird way to show this thing that you don't use in the way that they showed you to do it. You know, it just
Yeah.
kind of takes you out into left field. I don't know. I took a look at the cage system. If it works for anybody, I'm 100% for it. But to me, it seemed like one of those little tricks that just makes things harder for you to really understand musically.
Yeah, and I totally hear you, man. And I guess that was my point, is like find what resonates with you and try to take something from it. Because I'm the same way. I mean, like I'm trying to find my way into these things, and I've been playing guitar most of my freaking life, and I'm pretty good, but I mean, I could be so much better in my mind. I want to be a more literate guitar player, like Chris is saying. I want to know where I am on the neck, and I want to know the notes I'm playing and the shapes and all that other stuff. And so, but for me, it is, I don't know, for some reason, it's just hard for me to find my way in, like jazz, for instance. Jazz is something I'd love to play more, but man, I got to find the right avenue for me that will make sense to me so that I can start to get in there and make some progress. So that was my point, is like, there's tons of stuff for you out there. Some of it, like Chris says, will lead you on these goose chases or might be confusing, but luckily there's a ton of stuff for you to consume, and find the stuff that does resonate with you or you think could be useful for you in your learning journey, and latch onto it and take what you can from it and put it in your own playing. Also, like I said, I think getting your ear to hear stuff is really important. And then also playing stuff on different parts of the neck. Like if you learn a phrase or a lead or whatever, play it where you think it is or where they're showing you it is, and then try to play it on different parts of the neck. That's a really cool exercise. And then, maybe also what I used to do too is I used to listen to I used to get in rabbit holes. Like I remember two solos that I really got into: the Stairway to Heaven solo and the All Along the Watchtower by Jimi Hendrix solo. I learned those solos as close as I possibly could to the way I thought they were playing them, right? Meaning, if the note was bent or if they were sliding or whatever it was, I tried to learn that verbatim. And I think I got pretty close, which is kind of fun to do. Also, maybe go down a rabbit hole with a certain lead, and it could be something simple, even a phrase for a beginner, and try to, and don't cheat and look at video, but try to listen to that solo, try to figure out where you think they're playing it on the neck, and then try to figure out all the little nuances. Like, oh, is this a bent note? Is he sliding? What is the player doing? And that's kind of a fun exercise. I really dug it. And I spent a lot of time on those two solos, and I think I nailed them. And that's another thing is don't just listen to the notes. I got caught up in that as a beginner too. Listen to it as a whole. And the feel of what the passage you're listening to or trying to learn. Yeah. Have you gone down the rabbit hole like that on some leads or some passages, Chris?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. And the things that I wish I would have known when I was doing that, like I have, and I don't have any specific examples, but I spent a good deal of time trying to work out something, and I'm trying to think, there's a good chance maybe I never did anything with it, which would be a shame. Which is kind of probably why I developed that. If I find something I like, I just bail and like take that. I really like what you said about, more than just the notes. That's huge. And that comes in as you get more adept. It's super, super important. And it's really good to, think about as early as you can. I wish I would have thought about that earlier. One example of some really brilliant playing, he makes it sound like he's really playing to the chords, but more than that, he's playing to the mood of the song, and it's just yes. Perfect on that level. And just listen to the way that he comes in and the way he exits, and just how exciting it is when he comes in. And then you listen to what he's playing, and it's like anybody who knows the major scale could work that out. It's pretty easy, but it's pretty brilliant, and that's the kind of shit that moves me. And what it is, it's the LP version of the song "Let It Be" by the Beatles, like George Harrison's solo, and just the way that he comes in and his feel, and just how much of that he just like owns that section.
Yeah.
Really good example of very simple, playing that really makes all the difference in the world. And, things that I would have missed when I was first listening to that is how he comes in, it's just how he makes that song. He makes his part as every bit as exciting as the song. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one thing was interesting, and I do this a lot. And what this is kind of like taking a break and kind of analyzing your own playing. And like I mentioned, I was learning these modes. And so what I wanted to do once I started getting them was like look over some solos that I have over the years. And like some of them, I think, well, this one sounds kind of exotic to me because, I know that it was maybe based on a minor or a major or something, but I know that it wasn't just
Yeah.
the straight, scale. So I'm like, I wonder what that is. And so then I started looking at the modes and in context and seeing which ones there were. And there was like, music is like, is just, is something you naturally go to from listening to it all the time. So these things that I
Yeah.
actually did were these modes that I didn't even know that I knew, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's a
Yep.
natural thing to find them. So the point of that is, kind of trust yourself. If you're just playing like, you're doing your little blues run or whatever up the neck, like start trying to put other notes in there, grab another note here
Yeah.
and there. And then like something like where you might go climb to a note, bend to that note. You know what I mean? Instead of, just
Yeah.
striking that note, or the opposite. If you were going to, strike a note, bend a note. And, bending in different places, like to get half step bends where you might be only thinking in like whole step bends or something, or the other way
Yep.
around. It's just, get just a little bit more melodic. And that's the other thing too, is it's always a good exercise. And this was really hard when I first started. And I wish I would have gave it more of a shot and stuck with
Yep.
it more, is learning melody, like melody, a vocal line,
Yeah.
like take a vocal line of a song and try to figure it out on the guitar. I do that all the time if I'm stuck for a solo.
Totally.
And the other thing that's new to me now is, and I've been doing this since I've been learning the piano too, is I'll try to learn a song on the piano without listening to it. You know what I mean? From memory. I'm like, I
Yeah.
remember how the song goes. And there's a few songs that I figured out and I hit the exact key and everything else. Those little like practices of just like you thinking about music and finding it on the fretboard is really cool and really important.
That's all great. I love that. Yeah. All of that that's gold. I love that stuff. And for me, like, when I was starting out, I was young and I was very impressionable. And so I was really drawn, and this might be true for young players across the board. I'd love to hear from younger players if this is true, but I was really drawn to fast playing and kind of aggressive playing and just, you know, kind of show off stuff, and but as I got older and like Chris is saying, all the stuff Chris said is so true. And it's what, as a musician, your ultimate goal is to express yourself on your instrument as fluently as possible based on whatever foundation you're against, right? That's the bottom line. And music is emotional. Music is this cool form of expression that is in some ways intangible. Like, there are people who's, you hear all these players that say, like people asked Dylan, like how he wrote these songs and he doesn't know. Right. I mean, there's this ethereal kind of mysterious coolness about music that when you're proficient at your instrument or different parts of your learning journey, you can have these little moments where you're kind of out of your body or you don't even know how you played that. Like I'll listen to stuff I played years ago and go, that's cool, but I'd have to relearn that, like, and so my point is, even as a beginner, think about, and maybe, hopefully we're not loading too much on you as a beginner, but think about, it's all about expression, and so what Chris said is so true. It's like, think about melody, think about even just a series of notes that sound really cool against whatever bedrock you're playing under, the chord progression, whatever that is. That's the key to remember, is that you're trying to get proficient at your instrument so that you can express yourself in ways that you find pleasing, or the band finds pleasing, or whatever you're serving. You're serving the song ultimately, so you want whatever you create to help along in that journey and that result, essentially.
That's true. And when you were saying that, I kind of had the same thought. It's like if this person like just really like just started playing leads, so it's more of a mechanical thing they're looking for now, which I mean,
Yeah.
the advice we're giving might be a little bit beyond what that. But I mean, that's something that
Yeah.
you can also grow into. And it's some if you thought about
Exactly.
again, this is stuff that I wish I would have known when I started, right when I started putting like
Yeah.
working out where to make leads and stuff like that. And
Me
that
too.
if it is just a case of where you're just getting started with leads, that is a lot about the mechanic, finding out where the notes were, learning them on the neck. That's like the basic theory that I would recommend for anybody is obviously the major and the minor scales and also the scale degrees. You probably know the 1, 4, 5, but those are really handy for figuring out how chords fit together and how leads go over top of chords. That was a huge thing for me when I figured those out. And then learn all of the chords in a key, like just take a certain key and then figure out all the major and minor chords that are in that key.
Yep.
And that will also help you when you're trying to put, notes over chords and things like that. So
Again, that's great stuff. And like Chris is saying, take all of this stuff, take it in, but it's all stuff that I agree. I wish I would have learned sooner than later because, on my journey, like I said, I mean, you start out and for whatever reason, things come into your head about, why I'm playing certain things or whatever. But yeah, all of this stuff, I wish I would have known sooner than later. But from a nuts and bolts standpoint, like if you want to noodle around or something like that, luckily now you can download backing tracks if you want from the web, that chord progressions that will give you endless hours of backing tracks you can just noodle to, right? And like Chris says, you can learn, you can take all of what Chris said and I said so far about, finding out where it is on the neck and all this other stuff. You'll start to get your ear will start to get trained. Oh, that's an A, or that's a D, or oh, it sounds like they're in G. So the backing tracks are a great way to do it, and you can just noodle away and just find your way. And then also looper pedals are another great thing. They're inexpensive, and you can put your own little chord progressions together, and then play over. And then listen to and another thing is maybe record yourself playing over these backing tracks so you can kind of hear how you sound and you can hear, oh yeah, I those notes didn't really sound good in that transition from this chord to that chord or whatever. Like Chris is saying, use your ears to listen to what you're doing over these chord progressions so that you can start to learn what sounds good to you or what you think is really serving whatever chord progression you're dealing with.
Yeah, and another tool to add to your toolkit, which right now it's like kind of been the subject of all this doom and gloom, which is maybe for a good reason, some of it. But Chat GPT is a great tool. It's like a life changer for me for my what I do for work.
Nice.
But I've been using it more and more for music, asking it questions and having it break down things like just feeding it like, this is my chord progression. What do you think of this? And it'll tell you all this shit about it and maybe give you suggestions of things like that. When I was working out modes, I was asking it questions because, like I said, some of the stuff was really confusing and kind of like convoluted the way it was taught. And it helped me get to a place where I could like learn it the way that I like to learn, which was really important. So yeah, it's indispensable for a lot of things. I mean, we might as well use it for good because it's going to take over the world someday. So we might as well get what we can from it. But no, it's really, really cool to ask. I mean, ask stupid things like Beatles questions and shit like that all the time, and it's really cool for that. I mean, so that's a tool that can really help out with your education as far as like learning how to solo and it'll analyze solos. I asked it. You can ask it about solo. What do you think of this solo? And it'll break it down and tell you what about the solo, what's going on with the solo. And you can take what you want from it. You don't have to take everything. Some of it's over my head, but some of it is like, oh, that's cool. So I think about that. It's just kind of like, doesn't matter who you are. Like, even the best like guitar players in the world, in some ways, we're just kind of like a lick library. You just collect things and you put them into your playing, I mean? And the things that you collect now, some of them will carry over for the rest of your guitar playing.
Well, I like what you said about the lick library too, because that is a great way to start getting a vocabulary going as a lead player, right? And like Chris says, listen to songs and listen to he and I like to kind of focus on some cliche riffs and play them for one another and chuckle about it because there are some cliche riffs that guitar players have done in the past that that have gotten used several times that we kind of get a kick out of. So there's that. But But yeah, a lick library is super cool. But and then using that lick library to kind of, like I was saying before, eventually what you want to do is find a way to express yourself in a fluid way. You know, you'll have all these things in your back pocket, right? I can do these certain licks or this play this certain way, but hopefully you'll get to a point where subconsciously your subconscious will take over and you'll put together these pieces that are cool and inspiring and serve the song in the best way possible. So
And another,
yeah.
yeah, another thing that to work on, which I don't remember in my journey when I started working in this, but it's certainly important and it probably would help, to start as early as you're able to, is,
Uh-huh.
like vibrato and like bending. When
Oh
you
yeah,
listen to
yeah.
like early lead players, what you'll hear sometimes is these little horse bends. First of all, you'll recognize the scale that they're playing, and these like little horse bends,
Yeah.
and like maybe no vibrato or over vibrato. And when I say vibrato, it's like that's the thing that kind of determines. It's like your fingerprints. It'll eventually, to quote Nigel Tufnell, no, but well, it's kind of like a very deeply personal thing. And a lot of like times you'll hear people that do like the classic vibrato, the bend, and then and it's like you kind of keep an eye out to find your own thing, but that's probably way, way down the road. And another thing that I thought of that I wish, what I eventually learned, but it was like in the middle of my guitar journey, is you'll see so many Strat players. You watch them play, and automatically it's like it's Stevie Ray Vaughan, right? Cool, whatever. I mean, he's a great
Yeah.
guitar player,
Yeah.
whatever. But I did the same
Yep.
thing, like with when it came to like country music and the Stones. I got my country music through the Stones, so that's once I learned to say, "Hey, the Stones were listening to all this Bakersfield and all this other music," and I went back and started listening to real country music. That's when my style of country music came, into it, where I started to develop my own style because I was doing what the Rolling Stones were doing, and like
Yeah.
Stevie Ray Vaughan's. It was like what was the Kings? He was playing, whatever the Freddie
Yeah.
King,
All the
all
Kings.
the
Yeah.
Albert King. But
Yeah.
so if you go back to his source, that's like instead of trying to take a shortcut and end up sounding like everybody else who wants to be Stevie Ray Vaughan, you might be able to find a little bit of your own, your own voice
Yeah.
by just kind of visiting the same place that he did, And that was something that really helped my playing. I mean, I still play a lot like the Rolling Stones, but I mean, I got a lot as far as like when I'm playing country flavored stuff, it's like I can salt and pepper it with, Roy Nichols and, Don Rich and all
Yeah.
that other stuff is because I learned that stuff. And besides that, it was really cool to learn that. You know what I mean? A
Yeah.
lifetime love of music from breaking away from the Stones for a minute and go and say, what were they listening to? Where does this country music come from? So, yeah, I mean, that's something I would definitely recommend as far as like, you can never listen to too much music.
Oh, totally. And I love that. I love that advice because that's exactly my journey too. Like, and it's fun. It's fun even as a beginner to say, oh, I'm really into this art, like Stevie Ray Vaughan. And then what was he influenced by? And you can find out, and you can go find out, like I remember Clapton talking about Robert Johnson, and boom, you go way back and hear what he was doing back in the 30s and 40s, and it's insane. And that all of that, it's because all of this informs you as a player. And the more information you can get like that into your system, the better. Because like Chris said, your ultimate goal is to sound like you, not to sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan or Jimi Hendrix or whoever, but to sound as much like you as possible.
I believe for me and, for a lot of people, probably that was something I wish I would have done is go back
Yeah.
further.
Yeah.
But looking at different types of vibrato. Angus Young's vibrato on those Bon Scott records is amazing. And that's
Very distinctive.
completely
Yeah.
different than I would say like Leslie West has a really, really great vibrato too. And that was, that either that mountain stuff, probably the mountain stuff would be a good
Yeah.
place to catch that. And then like Michael Schenker, who has a really great vibrato. And it's so interesting, but Michael Schenker was influenced by Leslie West hugely. And I didn't know that. And then when I knew that, I was like, oh, you can definitely hear that. So different styles
Yeah.
of vibrato. I mean, I kind of jumped into this weird area of another suggestion, but it's like just, taking some time and listen to records and say, I'm just going to listen to vibrato, hear what people are
Yeah.
doing.
No, I love
and,
it.
Just absorb it.
Yeah.
You don't have to try it or anything. Just absorb it and be able to tell what makes it different, how it affects the song and things like that. So
Again, it's just great advice to listen to these different things. Yeah. So I think we covered a lot of ground, and I hope we're not overwhelming beginners, but take all of this with a grain of salt. Take what you can from it. The one good thing about being a beginning guitar player in this day and age, and Chris and I both talk about this all the time, is your options are endless. I just go out and explore and find the ways that resonate with you, start soloing and start improving your playing.
Right. And have fun. It's no good if it's not fun, you know?
Yeah. And the fun part is super crucial. Have fun. Okay? That's a commandment. Have fun. Well, you got any more for the listener, or do you think we filled up the cup?
I think that's pretty good. I think we touched upon everything that everyone could ever want to know about soloing.
Cool. Well, Amol, please correct my pronunciation. Amol Amrit was the listener that sent us this, and we really appreciate it. So cool. I'm going to reach out to you again to tell you we did this episode. And thanks so much for listening to our podcast. We really appreciate it. And we are on social media. We're trying to transition people to Blue Sky. Blue Sky is a new social media platform that I think is trying to do the right thing. And we'd love you to come over and follow us on Blue Sky. We're members of the Ruinous Media Network, and we're totally psyched about that. It's a great network full of other music-related podcasts and content, so check them out. And as always, just keep listening, and we really dig doing this and appreciate you listeners out there. What do you got?
Have fun. Solo, have fun.
Words to live by.